Well, this is a multi-billion-dollar fraud program that is still being uncovered. Now, estimates are estimating that it's about $9 billion of tax money.
There are still many rumors in the air, but what many can confirm is that Philadelphia just witnessed a federal raid that will change the city forever. ICE and the FBI didn't just knock. They used armored vehicles to breach a compound and took 800 people into custody. It sounds like a movie, but the weapons cache they pulled out of there is terrifyingly real.
Just this week, they've seized more than 11,000 firearms headed for Mexico along the southern border. They say each of these guns represents the possible loss of countless lives.
Hands down, this is the biggest blow to the new Generation Black Panthers since they started their armed patrols. The thing is, this might just be the beginning of a much larger conflict. Ground zero for the compound raid. Federal agents moved into North Philadelphia under the cover of darkness, and the sheer scale of the operation left residents in total shock. This was a coordinated strike involving hundreds of agents from both ICE and the FBI, targeting a fortified compound that had become the headquarters for the new Generation Black Panthers. This group had been making national headlines for weeks, not for peaceful marches, but for carrying high-powered rifles and openly threatening federal officers who dared to enter their territory. The raid resulted in over 800 individuals being taken into custody, making it one of the largest single-day arrest operations in the history of the city. Inside the compound, agents discovered a massive cache of weapons that went far beyond basic self-defense. We are talking about semi-automatic shotguns, modified rifles, and thousands of rounds of ammunition. For months, the leader of this movement, Chairman Birdsong, had been posting videos on social media showing his followers how to handle these weapons and telling them to be ready for war. He claimed the group was only there to protect the immigrant and black communities from federal overreach, but the FBI sees it differently. They believe this was a staging ground for a much more aggressive campaign against law enforcement. The crazy part is how quickly the situation escalated from neighborhood patrols to a full-blown federal siege. Philadelphia has always been a city with a lot of grit, and the local government wasn't exactly welcoming to ICE agents to begin with. The sheriff and the district attorney had both publicly warned federal agents that if they committed any crimes or acted outside the law, they would be arrested by local police. This created a weird power vacuum where the Panthers felt they had the green light to take over the streets. But here is the deal. Federal law usually trumps local talk, and the FBI finally decided they had seen enough. As the sun came up, the neighborhood looked like a scene from a documentary. Buses were lined up to transport the 800 detainees, and investigators in hazmat suits were seen entering the buildings to catalog the seized items. The weapons cache included Polish AK-47s and various types of tactical gear that suggested a high level of organization. This was not just a ragtag group of guys on a corner, this was a structured organization with a clear chain of command and a specific mission. The question everyone is asking now is how they managed to build up such an arsenal right under the noses of the authorities for so long. The tension in the air is thick because this raid didn't happen in a vacuum. It was sparked by a series of fatal shootings involving federal agents in other cities, which the Panthers used as a recruitment tool. They told young men in Philly that they were the only thing standing between their families and masked agents kicking in their doors at 5 in the morning. That message resonated deeply, and the group's numbers swelled almost overnight. But now, with 800 members behind bars, that movement has hit a massive brick wall. Authorities are now trying to figure out if there are other compounds like this one hidden in other major cities. End of the Birdsong era. Birdsong was not just a local leader. He was a man who understood the power of the internet and used it to build a small army. He often spoke about his grandfather being an original Panther and how he was continuing a legacy of self-defense. However, his version of the party was a lot more aggressive than what people remember from the 1960s. He openly stated that if a shot was fired at his people, they would return 30 more. That kind of rhetoric is exactly what put him on the federal radar. He used his experience in street life to organize his followers into a lethal force, and for a while, it seemed to work. In many of the neighborhoods the Panthers patrolled, the local police would actually turn around and drive the other way when they saw the group. The optics were wild. You had men in tactical vests carrying long arms standing on street corners while police cruisers just kept moving. This gave the community a sense that the Panthers were the ones actually in charge. But it also created a false sense of security for the group members. They started to believe they were untouchable because they had the support of the local politicians and the fear of the local cops. Get this, the recruitment process for this group was surprisingly modern. They weren't handing out flyers at the park, they were running sophisticated social media campaigns. Young men who felt left behind by the system saw these videos of armed men standing tall and wanted to be a part of it. The group offered a sense of purpose and a lifestyle that was 24/7. It wasn't just a weekend hobby, it was a total commitment. This is why the arrest of 800 people is such a massive blow. It effectively wiped out a huge chunk of their active membership in one sweep. The weapons seized during the raid tell a story of a group that was preparing for a prolonged conflict. Along with the rifles and shotguns, agents found tactical communication equipment and body armor. This suggests that the Panthers were not just planning to stand their ground, they were planning to coordinate their movements during a fight. The federal government is particularly concerned about the Polish AK-47s found at the site. These are high-quality firearms that are highly prized for their reliability, and having dozens of them in one place is a major red flag for national security. Nobody expected this to happen so fast, but the federal government has a way of moving silently until the very last second. While the Panthers were busy filming patrols and giving interviews about their rights under the Pennsylvania Crime Code, the feds were building a massive case. They were tracking the movement of weapons and monitoring the group's communications. By the time the armored vehicles rolled into North Philly, the trap was already set. The Panthers may have known the law, but they didn't realize how much heat they were actually drawing. The legal battle over these 800 arrests is going to be a complete nightmare for the city's court system. Breaking the local truce. The political climate in Philadelphia made this whole situation even more complicated. You had the sheriff, Rochelle Bilal, basically calling ICE a fake law enforcement agency on camera. She promised that if they touched anyone in her city without a proper warrant, her deputies would put them in jail. Then you had the district attorney, Larry Krasner, telling the feds that Donald Trump couldn't save them if they committed state crimes. This gave the Black Panthers a lot of political cover and made them feel like they were the auxiliary force for the city's own government. See, but here's the catch. The federal government doesn't need permission from a local sheriff to execute federal warrants. While the city officials were talking tough at press conferences, the FBI and ICE were operating on a different level. This created a massive disconnect between what the people in the neighborhood thought was happening and what was actually going down. The community felt protected by the Panthers and the local government, but in reality they were sitting in the middle of a major federal investigation that was about to boil over. It is not that simple, though, because many people in Philly actually liked having the Panthers around. Right next to the rifles, the group had set up tables with free groceries and hot soup for the homeless. They were doing the work that many felt the government had abandoned. This is how they gained so much trust. People weren't just joining because they wanted to carry guns, they were joining because they saw someone finally standing up for them. This makes the raid feel like a betrayal to many residents who now see the feds as an invading force. Yeah, about that weapons cache, the feds are using it to justify the entire operation. They are showing off the semi-automatic shotguns and the crates of ammunition to prove that this wasn't just a neighborhood watch. They want to paint the Panthers as a dangerous militia that was a tick away from starting a riot. The local officials are now in a tough spot. If they defend the Panthers, they look like they are supporting armed militants. If they stay quiet, they look like they abandoned the people they promised to protect. The crazy part is that even with 800 people in custody, the spirit of the movement hasn't completely died. There are already new videos popping up online from smaller cells of the group, promising to keep the patrols going. They are calling the raid a kidnapping and saying that the war has only just begun. It is a dangerous game of chicken between the feds and the streets. The feds showed their hand with this massive raid, but the streets of Philly have a very long memory when it comes to outside interference. Many wonder if the weapons cache was really as big as the feds say, or if it was just a way to make the raid look better. Mystery of the seized cache. The details of the weapons cache are starting to leak out, and it is more intense than anyone imagined. For starters, investigators found a room that was dedicated entirely to the assembly and modification of firearms. They weren't just buying guns, they were working on them. This suggests a level of technical skill that you don't usually see in street-level organizations. There are also rumors that the feds found documents outlining tactical plans for different parts of the city, which would explain why they were so eager to move in and shut it down. What most people don't realize is that a compound of this size requires a lot of money to run. 800 people don't just show up and live in a building for free. There are questions about where the funding was coming from. Was it all just community donations, or was there a larger benefactor behind the scenes? Some wild theories are floating around about outside groups using the Panthers to destabilize the area, but there is no hard evidence for that yet. The feds are currently following the money trail to see who was really pulling the strings. Hands down, the most shocking thing found in the compound wasn't a gun at all. It was a sophisticated surveillance system that allowed the Panthers to monitor police radio and watch the perimeter for blocks in every direction. They had cameras hidden in trees and on light poles, giving them a bird's-eye view of any approaching threats. This is why the feds had to use such overwhelming force. They knew they couldn't just sneak up on the place. They had to hit it fast and hard with armored vehicles before the occupants could react. The total count of the seizure included over 200 long arms and enough ammunition to fill several large crates. This is a key detail because it shows the group was prepared for a long-term siege, not just a quick skirmish. They also had stockpiles of food and medical supplies, suggesting they were ready to hunker down for weeks if they had to. This wasn't a community center, it was a bunker. The scale of the preparation is what has everyone at the FBI so concerned about what else might be out there. Nobody expected this to happen, but it just goes to show how much is going on beneath the surface in our major cities. You can walk past a building every day and have no idea that there is a massive arsenal and 800 people inside preparing for a conflict. It makes you wonder what else is hiding in plain sight. As the investigation continues, the feds are likely to uncover even more connections between this compound and other groups across the country. Do you think the federal government was justified in storming the compound, or was this a direct attack on a community trying to protect itself? Make sure to leave a comment below with your thoughts, and if you found this informative, hit the like button and subscribe for more.